Tuesday 24th of February 2015. Although the sheet's now missing, can I remind the members that this meeting may be recorded and made available later for public listening. Lucy, can we have Sederunt and Apologies, please?
Good morning, members. We have 20 members present today. Councillor McGregor is not present but may be along in a moment. Councillor Thompson is present today but will not be taking part in the meeting.
Thank you, Lucy. Declarations of interest, members. Councillor Stitt.
Thanks, Chair. Exempt item, if there's one if it's discussed, I will have to leave due to family interest.
Thanks for that, Councillor Stitt. Councillor Mail.
Item 13, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Yen and then Councillor Simon.
Thank you, Chair. On item 12, carers assessment and carers support plans. As I have involved with the Dumfries and Galloway Multicultural Association, we have a project called Minority Carers Support Project. However, this report is not implicated on any financial benefits on this project. So I will sit here as on a strategic level. I will join the discussion.
Thank you for that, Councillor Yen. Councillor Simon, then Councillor McCutcheon.
Thanks, Chair. Item 13, I've got a family member receiving some of these services. I'm quite happy to leave the room while that's been discussed.
Thank you, Councillor McCutcheon.
Thank you, Chair. The same as Councillor Symes.
Thank you, Councillor Dick.
Thanks, Chair. On item 7, the voluntary day centres, I'm an advisor to the Management Board of the Coronation Day Centre in Dunmuir, but don't intend to leave the meeting.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Nicholl.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I have the same position with the Riverside Day Centre in Newton Stewart as Councillor Dick has in Stranraer, so I'll stay in.
Thanks very much for that. Councillor Mail.
With that, Chair, I attend usually the day centre meetings in Langham, not on the board, but attend the meetings, so I'll stay in the room as well.
Thank you. Go on that, Lucy. Okay, everyone recorded their interest. Oh, just remember, anyone who has a mobile phone will be kind enough to switch it off, please. And we come to item 3 on the agenda, which is independent inquiry into child sexual exploitation in Rotherham 1997 to 2013. Presentation by Chief Social Work Officer, Head of Children, Families and Criminal Justice Service. Lillian.
Thank you. I had agreed at the last Social Work Committee that I would do a brief presentation on the findings of the child exploitation in Rotherham in terms of the J report. The J report was published on the 21st of August 2014 and it gave an overview of 66 case files that were examined. It is estimated that during the period of the span of the review there was 1,400 victims in the period covered by the report. However, if you actually read beyond the actual findings in the summary of the report, Professor J was absolutely clear that she believed that this number was on the low side and actually there was many more victims who were subject to child sexual exploitation. I think it's important that we note that a large number of the cases, most of the victims were white British children, and the majority of the perpetrators were from the minority ethnic communities. There was also a significant amount of criticism with regards to the prosecution of the offences. There were many police inquiries and many charges brought, but the actual outcome in terms of prosecution was extremely small. I think we need to just have a fairly brief overview of the nature and the context of the levels of child sexual exploitation in Rotherham. The children were raped by multiple perpetrators. There was evidence of trafficking, abduction, and a significant amount of intimidation. There was one particularly harrowing story of a young girl who had been doused in petrol and had lived with the threat of being set alight through what was a 4 or 5 hour ordeal. I think it's important that we actually recognise that a lot of the victims were classed as young people, in particular young girls who were out of control, who were viewed that they were putting themselves in the position of risk and the actual outcome for them was as a choice. So I think it's really important that we note these findings, that they weren't viewed to be victims. I think it's important for ourselves, in terms of reflecting on how we keep children safe in Dumfries and Galloway, that we take on board some of the issues that were raised in terms of the professional leadership and the political leadership. They had an overall lack of response to children's needs, and as a multi-agency approach to how they were dealing with these victims, how they were dealing with the reports, how they were dealing with a number of the issues that were raised from various parties. A lot of it was just dismissed, and a lot of the actions that should have been taken, particularly in terms of the charges, and as I said earlier, in terms of convictions, were not followed through by any of the multi-agencies. Quite significantly, that teachers were reporting to the police on a regular basis that known perpetrators were outside the school gates at lunchtime, and there was no action taken against them. So teachers were aware that young girls were leaving during the lunch break, being picked up by a range of known perpetrators, and the police took no action to deal with that. There was also a significant amount of briefings took place to the chief executive services, to senior managers, to children's services executive and to elected members. And during the actual process of the J report, the elected members had indicated that they had no knowledge of the ongoing issue of child sexual exploitation in Rotherham. However, many council meetings were recorded and minuted, and there was evidence that a lot of these issues had been brought to the attention of the elected members. I think it's also significant that the councils, particularly council officers, had not checked the policies and procedures in dealing with what was clearly a known issue within Rotherham. I think as well, in terms of the known risk factors, alcohol misuse, substance misuse, areas that clearly we deal with in social work services. There was absolute clear evidence that a lot of the issues for the young people in particular, a lot of them had alcohol and substance misuse issues, as did their families. The health service had recorded that a number of the young girls in that 15, 16-year-old bracket had many episodes of mental health issues, many episodes of self-harm, and a number of them had been admitted to hospital with regards to their ongoing mental health. There didn't seem to be a joining up of sharing that information. I think, again, for ourselves to reflect on is that the amount of the workload implication, particularly for children and families. They were extremely high caseloads for staff, extreme amounts of requirement on the staff. There was insufficient resources, and there wasn't a clear policy by senior managers on how they were dealing with the workload management issue. There was no prioritisation framework, and they certainly had little training in dealing with child sexual exploitation. When some social work staff raised the issue with colleagues, they were themselves accused of being racist, given the profile of the alleged perpetrators. I think it's quite difficult in terms of, if you read the J report, she talks at length about the governance structures and how there was no clear reporting mechanism for children's services. There was no overall view by senior managers, and there was no reporting at all to elected members on the progress within children's services, or indeed some of the issues that were being raised by social work staff and health frontline staff on the ground. There was a real playing down of some of the issues in terms of, again, the ethnic element of the alleged perpetrators. And some of that led to managers actually recording that social workers shouldn't take any action. So these are all areas that Jay felt important that she raised. Following the Jay report, Louise Casey, who is one of the senior government officials in terms of looking after children, was asked to have a look at the actions that Rotherham had taken since the Jay report. And you will see that as a consequence of the Casey report, the full of the Rotherham Cabinet have resigned, and Rotherham City Council are now in special measures. And as you'll see there, the Casey report concluded that the council's culture was unhealthy, bullying, sexism, suppression and misplaced political correctness. So the council themselves have clearly a long way to go in terms of resolving some of the issues. I felt it was important that we had that we could provide you with some of the areas that we're having a look at in terms of children's services within Dumfries and Galloway. We started to have a look at how do we deal with child sexual exploitation. We need to have a look at the vulnerability. We need to have a look particularly in terms of having the Port Authority and some of that in terms of child trafficking, some of the issues that we face. And indeed last night we had 2 young children brought off the ferry at Stranraer, and there was a view that they indeed could have been trafficked. So we were dealing with that last night. So I think it's really, for us in Dumfries and Galloway, that's a real issue. We're also having a focus on our looked after children in terms of risk assessment and placements. And again, this committee has raised the issues about external residential providers within Dumfries and Galloway, and we're doing a significant amount of work with the care inspectors in terms of registration and having that information shared with us. We've currently undertaken a full review of the literature in respect of children's sexual exploitation, about our staff's ability to understand, to raise awareness. We've done that on a multi-agency basis. We've agreed a plan with Bernardo's to take forward the Helping Local Authorities report, which I'm happy to distribute to all members, elected members within the council, if that would be helpful. We've identified 4 members of staff who have attended the training on how to recognise and deal with child sexual exploitation. They are now qualified trainers, and they will start the rollout to the rest of our social work staff to ensure that on a local basis we have well-equipped and well-trained staff ready to deal with these issues as they arrive. You'll be aware, following the external scrutiny report from the Care Inspection into Children's Services, that we've taken a significant amount of multi-agency service development forward via the Children's Services Executive Group. We've got an improvement team for children's services. We have clear, robust reporting mechanisms now to the Chief Officers Group and indeed to this committee. And we have in the process of developing, in terms of all children's services, but particularly for vulnerable children, a more robust training strategy. Resources clearly are a challenge for us in terms of children's services, but we are looking at how we can better manage our resources and be much more effective, particularly in young children being placed out with region and residential placements. We have been subject to revisit from the care inspectors, and I would hope that when we receive their report, which should be at the middle of March, that we'll be coming back to Social Work Committee, and you will see the progress that we have started to make, whilst recognising that we have a significant way to go. We have started to link with other council departments, and indeed I have agreed to do this presentation to the licensing colleagues and any other external colleagues in terms of other council departments that would wish this input. So we are trying to raise the awareness that it's everybody's business, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lillian. If nothing else, it's a very sobering report and one that I hope members take, recognise and solve. Councillor Dick.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the presentation. Just in your mention in reference to the A75 and Lochrayan Ports corridor, I recall a few years ago when the policing ports unit and the border agency were reduced, there was a presentation to elected members by the then Chief Constable in Dumfries and Galloway, who identified something like around about 93 different nationalities coming through those ports, and it was recognised as almost like a backdoor into Europe. And of the 2% that they checked, 25% were of interest to the police, and that's quite a high proportion. So with reference to the fact that you mentioned this in the report there, do you think there are sufficient resources to identify any form of trafficking such as that, or are you intending that perhaps it ought to be, I don't know, stepped up? Or can I just ask really what you're suggesting as a result of that?
Are you asking Lillian about policing, or are you asking about social work in particular? Because we have a very specific focus here today.
Social work in particular.
Lillian?
Thank you, Councillor Dick. We have raised this issue through the Children's Services Executive Group, which is clearly attended by a member of Police Scotland. I think the reality for the police particularly is that it's a border agency control issue. But we're raising the issue as best as we can, and clearly in terms of social work services, whenever this is brought to our attention, we'll robustly deal with it. But unfortunately, I accept that there will be some children come through that process that we have no control over.
Thanks, Councillor Dick. Councillor Ferguson?
Thanks, Chair. I noticed in Lillian's last slide there in the way ahead, there was no mention of the Child Protection Committee, which is multi-agency, as you know. I'm assuming that's just a wee mistake.
On behalf of this committee, I attend that meeting. I've attended everyone that's been convened today. I meet Pat Shearer on a monthly basis in relation to child protection issues, just to keep myself abreast of what's happening. And Lillian, do you want to respond to that, please?
Clearly the mechanism to report to Child Protection Committees through the Children's Services Executive Group.
Happy with that. Councillor Yen and Councillor Simon.
Thank you, Chair. As observing your presentation, thank you very much for this. It's very sad as a member of ethnic minority community, and the majority of the perpetrators are from the ethnic minority background. I'm very sad for that. I think the justice should be taken regardless of race, religion, or gender, or ethnicity. And this should be, the way forward, not because you're from ethnic minority and we're not going to take any actions to justify the report and the case. And I would like to speak to Lillian later on multicultural background, how we could work together for Dumfries and Galloway.
You happy with that, Lillian? Yeah. Thanks very much for that offer, Councillor Yen. Lillian will be happy to take that up. Councillor Simon?
Thanks, Chair. As a former foster carer looking after care, I know that a lot of carers and parents nowadays they find it very difficult to cope with internet abuse, and I know that a lot of these young people and children, they have a way now that they are contacted by the internet, and we had a very valuable seminar a couple of years ago at a social work seminar where the police unit that worked with that came and gave a good presentation. And I know that the police have been going to schools and that. I think it's quite important that we keep that going, because that is one problem that we have nowadays. These kids are so easily contacted through the net, either by websites or telephones.
Thanks for that, Councillor Simon. Councillor Maitland?
I think what came through on this is that it was a massive problem that overwhelmed people, and they just did not want to accept it, to look at it, to address it. I have asked officers here, as I'm sure other members have, about the scale of the problem and the likelihood that we would be able to pick it up and recognise it and do something about it. I was comforted by the response, but there is a problem, I think, and it does mystify me that external inspectors at the time did not appear to pick this up and didn't appear to really flag it up, or to flag it up in such a way that the council could not avoid doing something about it. And I'm just intrigued as to if there's a difference in the way that these inspectorates happen in the south, or whether or not we would be able to pick up, if there was a problem of that nature, would we know, is what I would be concerned about. Because actually, I would hope that we would, as a committee, do something about it, because it's not of such a scale that it would just overwhelm us, but we must keep abreast of it. So would we know, and would the inspectorate, why did the inspectorate not do something about it?
I'd be disappointed if as a council we didn't do anything about it, but Lillian, would you like to respond to that, please? I think it's maybe just a rhetorical question.
Councillor Maitland, I certainly know that in terms of Care Inspectorate now. In terms of the J report, they have included it into their areas for inspection. It is a different inspection regime in England, which I would happily off table give you some further information if required. In terms of your second part of your question, I'm confident that we share the information now much more robustly. We can never eliminate risk, so I couldn't give you 100% assurance that it isn't happening, but I would be confident that the sharing protocols that we now have in place in terms of the multi-agency children's services agenda, then we would be aware of the problem and absolutely would address it and bring it forward.
Jane?
May I just ask a factual question? Not all of the children were looked after, were they?
They weren't all looked after, but most of them had been known to the services.
Thanks, Jane. Councillor Carruthers and Councillor Nicholl.
Chairman, excuse me. I think the question is very similar to what Councillor Maitland just asked in regards to what was the likelihood of that ever becoming prevalent in Dumfries and Galloway. How would we actually pick up on that as a committee, I suppose, in particular? But it does the first half of that presentation, an excellent presentation, but it makes you sick to the pit of your stomach, to say the least, in what actually happened there. In regards to mental health issues, a lot of these kids had mental health issues. Was that because of something they were born with, or was it something they inherited, or the suffering that they actually undertook? Is that part of that? Is that what brought the mental health issues on?
Before you answer that, Lillian, would it help members if we got an overview of what the council's actually doing in terms of child protection? Seminar on it? Do you want to learn what we're actually doing to ensure that such a situation does not occur in Dumfries and Galloway? Or would a briefing note help? Which do you prefer? But anyway, while you deliberate that, I'll ask that at the end whenever there's an opportunity to speak. Can you apply it, Councillor Carruthers, please?
Councillor Carruthers, I don't know the full extent of all the young people, but the majority of their mental health was as a consequence of their social circumstances.
Councillor Nicholl.
Thanks, Chair. During your presentation, Lillian, you mentioned 2 or 3 times out of area placements. Is this a section that gives you serious concern? And if so, what can we do to counteract those concerns?
Well, hopefully we'll be reducing out of area placements very soon. But Lillian, would you like to respond to that, please?
Councillor Nicholl, it has, since I came into post in August, been an area of concern for me, because I think we have lots of young people in Dumfries and Galloway that we're not aware of because of the use of the residential external providers. We are working in conjunction with the Care Inspectorate to enhance the registration so that we are notified. And as Councillor Dempster says, we are looking to bring our own young people back into regions, so we would be in consultation with the private providers to look at a more robust way of delivering that service in partnership with them rather than working in different ways with them. So it is an area of concern, but I'm confident we're beginning to address that area.
Thanks, Graham. If there is an opportunity to speak, thanks very much for your contribution. Would members like a briefing note on what we are doing in relation to child protection, or would a seminar be more beneficial? Seminar?
Seminar, please, yep.
Could you arrange something like that in the foreseeable future, Lillian? Yes. We'll leave it to Lillian to come up with that at an appropriate juncture. Is that okay?
And that seminar would be for all members of the council?
Pardon?
Would it be for all members of the council?
Absolutely, yes, aye. Okay, thanks very much in that case. Thank you for the presentation. It's very thought-provoking, Lillian. We go to item 4, minute of meeting 22nd of January. True record of the meeting, members. There were 2 issues raised during the meeting that I promised to address. One was to meet the Chief Operating Officer for NHS in relation to the cancelled committee meetings. Each member will have had a copy of the explanation from Julie, having assurance that that will not happen again. Apparently there's a breakdown in communications as well between the council and NHS. Apparently NHS board weren't happy that I had cancelled the meeting without consulting them. Little were they aware I wasn't consulted myself. So, but anyway, I am assured or reassured that that will not happen again, and you have the explanation in front of you. The other thing is, Councillor Maitland and then Councillor Ferguson mentioned late reports, and I asked if you'd wait until this meeting to raise the matter. So it's not the minute's been dealt with and hopefully approved, but before we go on to agenda item 5, Councillor Maitland, what was the item you had that you reminded us was late?
I can't remember myself. I apologise, Chairman. You caught me on the hop. Oh, thank you very much. Yes, and I was actually talking about that earlier. It was spot and block contracts that we hadn't had information about that. An officer has been in touch with me, and I have, I hope, said what was needed and reminded people that that was an outstanding item.
So, Lillian, can we have a report in due course on that item, please?
We'll be able to provide that report for April committee.
Satisfied with that, Councillor Maitland? Councillor Ferguson, you were looking for late report?
Can I get a clue the same as Jane, please?
Well, you said there were one or two reports that had not yet come back before members. That was on the back of Councillor Maitland's comment.
I'm with you now. Yeah, some of them are starting to filter through now, but it's just why it's taking so long was the question, I think. But
If there are specific ones in, can you communicate them with Lillian, and Elaine will bring them at the earliest opportunity?
no, I know exactly what it is. I remember exactly what it was now. It was actually because the whole lot of them should actually come together as one was my understanding of what was going to happen, and looking at Ted here for a bit of support in this, because a lot of them all referred to the wider integration process, and I was a bit worried that they were going to come. My mic's on. I'm obviously not speaking loud enough. They all impact on the integration agenda, and there was a plan to actually try and bring them together as one, so they all interlinked with each other rather than treat them in isolation. That's what I was getting at.
Fine, so you're happy that things are moving along now? Thanks, Andy. Okay. In that case, with these items we have dealt with, we've approved the minute of the 22nd of January 2015, and we'll come to item number 5. We have Colin and Amanda with us. Lillian is the author of the report. Have you anything to add to your report, Lillian?
No, nothing to add, and Angela and Colin will take questions. Thank you.
Thank you. You'll note that we are in an improved position, and we have an assurance that this will be a balanced budget delivered by the 31st of March. Councillor Dick.
It was just on that, Chair, my first question, given that I think we'd left at the end of the year an overspend of approximately 40,000 and it's up to 212, that you're confident you can get that balanced budget within the 6 weeks. With reference to the 741 underspend on older people, is this a one-off, or are we going to predicate future budgets based on this? Because obviously there's a suggestion this might be a volatile figure, but it's quite a considerable one, and we think we really need to know that this is a sustainable figure.
Lillian, would you like to respond, please?
Councillor Dick, on your first point, it's actually December's. This is reporting period is up to December. And I'd ask Graham to make comment on the older people's.
Certainly. I think that's a really good point that you've raised. The underspend, if you look further down the report, the main reason for the forecast underspend is a projected increase in the overachievement of planned income. So it's not that we're not spending the money. Where we're actually saving the money, or where it looks like we're underspent, is because we're actually overachieving an income. Yeah.
Happy with that, Councillor Dick?
Just to follow that up, no, I do understand that it's coming from derived from income, but is it a sustainable figure? Is it likely to be? Could it fluctuate greatly? Can we predicate future budgets on that?
Based on there's a slight increase in income, which will be sustainable and ongoing. However, there is a one-off income that is only one-off due to the charging orders will not be on a recurring basis, and through the budget setting, we'll be looking to realign the budgets on the expected income anticipation and not on this year's actual income that we've received.
Thanks, Ian. Councillor Hislop.
Chair, it's with regard to the savings trackers. We've got the two that are the reasons given. In a full year coming forward, will those savings be achieved so that we're actually back on track? You can see that some might not be there. Some are possibly going to move to a better position. But going forward in the full years, do we expect to actually achieve the full saving?
Thanks for that, Councillor Slip. Angela, can you respond to that, please?
Yes, we can confirm that by the end of the year, these should be on track, or there will be recovery action in place, and the further savings for 2015, 16, we're already working on implementation plans for those.
Ivor?
Now, there's reference to replacement saving. I understand that that will happen, but will the actual savings that have been identified this year, when rolled forward next year, like so the second one, the intensive fostering, will that be delivered in full next year, so that the 300,000 will be there, or will it be other savings that will have to come in to replace that 300,000 because we won't achieve that figure?
The specifics of that particular saving will be delivered, and it's a recurring saving, so there will be a further saving made in the following financial year.
Thanks, Ivor. Councillor Yan? No? Councillor Ferguson?
Thanks very much, Chair. It's a question, really. Have we started to work on the high-cost care packages for children, or are we still concentrating on learning disability in adults?
Angela?
We have started to work on the children with disability high-cost care packages, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, Chair, it's on the same point, and to the remark made by Ivor in terms of if we are on target or on track to achieve the full savings. And I look at 3.6, children with disabilities and their families receive an appropriate level of care to support children at home. And it goes on to say that an increase in care packages, which have resulted in a new forecast overspend of 92k against the 344 there. And further on in the page, in that paragraph, this is equated to a 100% increase and is the main contributor to the remaining 252,000. My point to this one is where it says review it to use the budget with a view to better controlling the spend. And my concern here is the drive in this, whether it's to bring the budget into line or still provide for the assessed needs of those who require the whatever level of package. And I would want an assurance that we are dealing in assessed needs rather than being driven by the budget, notwithstanding we have a finite budget. That would be my first point, Chair. And my next one is to 3.9 in terms of kinship carers. And I think it's recognised again that in the financial year there has been an 18 placement increase from the last financial year, which I have predicted is continually on the increase. And again, I would hope that we are assessing the kinship carers and applying the same condition as we would for looked after children and those with comparable needs. And so I seek that assurance again. And I do note in 3.7 that foster placements have reduced, where kinship care is forever on the increase by all accounts taken in 3.9. So two assurances there, Chair, in terms of the assessed needs, and that we treat kinship care in the same way as we do just now or have done.
Thanks for that, Councillor Scobie. I'm quite sure Lillian will give that assurance, but Lillian, you'd like to respond, please?
Councillor Scobie, absolutely give you the assurance that the starting point is the assessment of need for individual care packages for children, and that is how we will continue to deliver the service. We clearly are looking in terms of the new kinship care policy, which has already been agreed by Social Work Committee, and absolutely we start at the premise that we look at kin and we will continue with that and make that commitment that the starting point is the assessed need of the child.
Thanks for that, Willie. Councillor Dick.
Thanks, Chair. Just in relation to my previous question on the planned income amount there, can I just ask how many people that actually affects, and what would happen if you had a dramatic change? I mean, supposing a number of people passed away, would you be able to cope with that? I think, in general, do you think that you've got a realistic budget, and given the assessed level of need across the services, is it sufficient to deal with the service and any emergencies which occur?
I would hope the answer is yes. Lillian? Angela?
Well, the answer is yes, but in relation to the one-off income, which Colin referred to earlier, it does relate, a majority of it relates to income from charging orders, which is when an estate is settled and the outstanding debt is then repaid to the council, and therefore it's not reliant on demand and fluctuations. It's more about happens to asset at the point of sale or demise.
So is that entire amount come from the sale of estates? It's not including income while users are actually paying for the services?
It's both. So that's why we're trying to distinguish between the one-off nature of some of the income and the regular nature of some. And there has been an increase, as Colin said, a small increase in the regular income, but the bulk has been as a result of charging orders coming to fruition.
Thanks, Ian. Andy, is this the same? Okay.
Thanks for letting me in, Chair. So, am I getting this right then? So, if this is some of the money set aside people's estate to help pay for their care, yeah? I've got that bit right. But what happens, and that was kind of, I think, the reason for Councillor Dick's question, if that person no longer needs the service, are we kind of predicating our whole budget here on the potential income? Because it would only be the amount of the money that would be chargeable would be recovered, not the full amount of the value of the property. So how do we deal with that?
Angela?
We're actually reviewing all of the income and the income projection targets, and we have discovered during the course of the last few months that that's a piece of work that needs to be completed. So that is ongoing. The income targets relate to income that is realistically achievable in any given year. And in a sense, the charging income up until now has been one-off and based on something that is unpredictable. Going forward, we want to have an accounting mechanism which will match the costs incurred to potential income to be received. We're not quite there yet, which is why we've seen this unexpected, if you like, increase in income during the year, which, yes, has improved our position overall and isn't sustainable because we need to get to the bottom of why it's happening. Colin, I think Colin would like to add.
Yeah.
So I would also add the one-off income that we've achieved isn't an estimation for future. That's actual invoices have been raised for care that's been incurred and stuff.
No, yeah.
If we're going to get bogged down in this, it may be better that in next month's report, Angela or Colin presents a more comprehensive explanation on how income achievement is arrived at. Andy?
Chair, I was actually going to commend him for the work.
Good. Okay. Well done. Councillor Carruthers.
Thanks, Chairman. I'm not going to be too picky over 0.27% of being over at this present moment in time. But in item 10, we have kinship care comes up, and I'm just bringing the connection in between the two. If Scottish Government, COSLA, Social Work Scotland, I think it is, and European Court of Human Rights, decide that we should be paying foster care at the same level as we do kinship care at the same level as foster carers, what pressure, what direct pressure does that put on this budget we've got here?
None have agreed to do that. That was a policy decision. We pay kinship carers now the same amount as we pay foster carers.
So it comes in at the same rate as it is at the moment?
It's done.
Because we're updated at that.
It's part of the budget, it's done.
That wasn't a 1 year.
Councillor Hislop.
Chair, it was just going forward, we've got, I think earlier on, because I was looking for the point that I was going to address, You said that we're in an improved position, we're hoping for a break even. Is there any, is it period 13 or month 13 issues that we should be concerned about coming up, whereby when we do close the books off, we've got something that we didn't expect?
I think we might always get something we don't expect, but no, I don't think so. No, in fact, I did ask Lillian, and I was being facetious, are you using journalistic licence here to balance the books? And she said, no, the books will be absolutely balanced and delivered in a negative or Angela.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Councillor Hislop, we have seen a further reduction in the overspend as of January, so we are on track to achieve a balanced budget by the end of March.
I got lost in the word balanced there. Fine, so we'll have a balanced budget, that's a guarantee, and given where we've been before, that is very, very encouraging indeed. Members happy to go to the recommendations? 2.1, that based on the position at the end of December 2014, social work services are forecasting an overspend of 212,000, which equates to 0.27% of the 2014-15 agreed budget. But the social work services management team are committed to returning a balanced budget and are actively progressing measures to control expenditure. The progress against the delivery of the agreed savings applied to social work services budget is reflected in Appendix 2, and the update in respect of the policy development budgets which are provided to social work services as reflected in Appendix 3. Thanks very much, members. Okay. We come to item 6, Dunmuir Park, progress and independent review recommendations. Well, then just want to speak briefly on this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members will be aware that the Chief Executive commissioned Jill Oatley to undertake an independent review of the range of issues that were presented as a consequence of the development at Dunmuir Park. Officers have written to elected members in January advising the work of the task group. This report gives elected members an update on the professional development of the task group, which is an officer task group in dealing with the issues that were raised. I hope the report gives you a comprehensive overview of the work to date, and Graham's happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Elaine. And it is just simply an update. Councillor Dick.
Thanks, Chair. Could I just ask at the beginning of this that there are assurances can be given that nothing that's discussed in here will prejudice the process?
I believe that's the case.
Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, and we have had voluminous amounts of communication, and that's from all sides. We have received reports and indeed an outcome of an investigation of some sort. We've continued to have emails from the families of the residents, and today I don't think in considering this we will be given any justice to the whole issue that has preceded this issue. The families still have serious concerns, as we have seen in the communication, and I would hope that in dealing with this issue as to where we're at just now, we can perhaps take the unprecedented approach by deferring the matter today and to set up a committee to fully scrutinise the process as to where we are at today, and the substantive issues that are still outstanding. A committee like the Employment Appeal Committee, where we can invite the parents and carers of those who are in Dunmuir Park, who use the facilities and are residents there, and that way we can, at least they can have their say, along with the officers and external bodies, people who have been involved in this process. I would hope we can take that unprecedented step so that we can get to the bottom of this issue.
As far as I understand, Councillor Scobie, we received communication from a representative of some of the families in Dunmuir Park, not all of them, and I certainly know something that I'm prepared to do. This is simply a report noting the work to date. That's quite clear. Lillian has assured me that this is a professional approach, and I'm happy and content to accept that. This report will be dealt with members today, hopefully be accepted in the spirit it's presented, and we will receive a further report when the work of the task group has been concluded. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, just to come back on one point, Chair, that you say, I hope that we can defer the issue and as I have said, take the unprecedented approach. But, you know, the emails we have been receiving from the families and carers has made it clear that an individual has been representing the parents and carers, while we may not have had communication from all the parents and carers. That has been made clear in the communication.
Thanks for that, Councillor Scobie. I'll just repeat what I said earlier. I'm not prepared to defer this report today. It will be presented. Councillor Maitland and then Councillor Hislop.
Chairman, thank you. I think we should look carefully at what we are being asked to do, which is to examine the progress on the independent review recommendations. And if you go through the level of actions which are already complete and those which are still outstanding, there are slightly more complete than are outstanding. I understand with you that this is a part done process. I think, having read this, which I think is a helpful report, and obviously having read carefully what has been coming through from the representative of the families involved, I think we have now a balanced picture. I think it'll be useful when the next committee report comes, and between that time, members will have the opportunity to ask the pertinent and, I think, detailed questions, which we now have because we have both sides of the progress in the process. So, Chairman, I see no advantage in delaying anything at this stage. In fact, I see quite the opposite, because I think that would stop the process, and I don't want to do that. I think we need to, for all sides, I think we need to bring this to a conclusion.
Grateful to you for that statement, Councillor Maitland. Councillor Hislop.
Chair, similar in mind to Councillor Maitland. I think one of the things that this committee has to do is to scrutinise the full issues here. We have an interim report, as I read it today. They're telling us what parts of the report have been complete, what parts are ongoing, what parts still need to come back to us. We will address that when the full report comes to us, I would have thought. There may be some learning points in here that we need to consider at another committee at another day, whether it be scrutiny or audit and risk. I think audit and risk have said there's some issues in here that they would like to look at, but that is not, or now is not the time to delay the process. We as a committee have a scrutiny role. We should take that scrutiny role and thoroughly look at this, then decide whether we wish it to go anywhere else or whether it actually needs to go anywhere else. But we should at first deal with it, and I don't think we should delay it today.
Thanks for that, Councillor Hislop. Any other member? Councillor Brodie.
Thanks, Chair. My understanding is that we've had an independent inquiry. It has highlighted a number of serious issues. We've set up a task force to deal with those issues. They haven't all been dealt with, but they will be dealt with in the next few months. And I think that by the end of the process, although some people are not very happy at the moment, at the end of that process, hopefully everybody will be reasonably satisfied with what we've done. So look forward to that. I think that ongoing is also the future care of the quality of care for the people in Dunmuir Park in the future. I think that's highlighted another part of the papers, and I think that's another important thing for the future as well, that we ensure that the quality of care for residents is top quality.
Thanks for that, Councillor Brodie. Councillor Carruthers.
Thanks, Chairman. I agree with the bulk of what's been said in regards to we should see this to fruition and reevaluate at that point, at whatever committee that may be. I think Wally makes some valid points in regards to how that process should be looked at that point. We might be happy with the final report, But if we don't, where do we actually send that and scrutinise it properly? It might need an actual independent committee to look at that. In regards to 3.6.8 in the papers on page 29, just the only thing that really stuck out to me, I thought, is there a risk there to the council in regards to this escalating to a higher level? It's that, I mean, it's a fulsome report, to say the least. So, in regards to the police matters in particular, will that escalate to a higher level? Is that something that just it's out with our hands and we'll stay away from it?
We can't comment on that at the moment, Ian. That's something that will come forward in the fullness of time. Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks, Chair. I was actually going to raise issue in 3.6, 3.7. You know, there are ongoing processes here, and whilst we don't want to hold this up and we need to let it continue, we'll get a chance to fully scrutinise the whole actions once these separate investigations are complete and reported on. And it's really very dangerous to actually even step anywhere near that today. So I'm aligned with almost everyone else that we actually we get this through today. But when it does come back, and when the full reports come back, we can get a full report back to this committee, warts and all, and then have a full scrutiny at that stage.
I think that's right, and I think the report's quite clear. Lillian's telling us what we're doing. You'd expect that. That's what a professional officer will do. This is the work to date. And agree to receive a further report at the conclusion of the task group's work. Absolutely right, professional, and I wouldn't expect anything else but members to endorse that. Councillor Mayo.
Just, have we any idea when the task group will be finished and when we'll get that report, Chair? Because it is important, obviously as quickly as possible, to see it through.
Graham will reply with indicative a time scale as April, I think. Graham?
I think with the timescales we're talking about, I think you're probably looking at the June committee.
Concluded by April and reported in June. But please don't hold us to that, because whatever we do, it will be done right, done professionally, and then reported back. I'd rather have that done than fight to reach a committee deadline. Councillor Thompson, did you want to speak now? Councillor Ferguson.
You've just echoed what I was actually going to say, Chair, because the crux of this matter is it needs to be investigated fully by everybody, and then we look at it. That's what I was saying. I was actually agreeing with you before. I wasn't having a pop. And you know, we need to let all these processes, not just because I'm assuming, and we shouldn't be assuming, but the task force will actually conclude after the ASP, the Adult Sport Protection investigations and everything else, with the prosecutor fiscal, whoever else is dealing with that, are complete. And I think if we get that assurance, I think that should keep everyone happy.
Graham, we have that assurance, and Graham's acknowledged that. Okay, are members then happy to go to the recommendations on item 6? Note the work to date of the Dunmuir Park Task Group to address the recommendations summarised in the appendix, and agree to receive a further report at the conclusion of the Dunmuir Park Task Group's work on the remaining actions. Thanks very much, Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, I've listened to the remarks of the members and your remarks in response, Chair, and I would hope that members will, at the conclusion or as the report is progressed and we have a report before us, that they do look at the unprecedented approach that I've suggested, so that we can give justice to the whole process and the outcomes where we allow the parents and carers to be part of that, so that we can get a full understanding of what did take place and to learn from it. I would hope at that point, and I've been suitably advised that there may be support for that, that is what the committee agree.
Councillor Scobie, that would not be my intention, but I'm guided by the committee. When the full report comes, if you want to present a case, then the committee is sympathetic. I will accede to that request, but at this moment in time, it's not my intention to take that direction of travel. But thanks for your contribution. Go to item 7, supporting older people in their communities, voluntary day centres. Lillian, do you or Angela or Graham? Graham, you anything to add to your report, Graham?
No, nothing other than to say that we've had a number of meetings with day centres, and my understanding is that the day centres are supportive of what's written in this report.
Thanks for that additional bit of information. Members, Councillor Mail.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And yes, while I welcome this report, I think it's tremendous that we're supporting the day centres fully again this financial year. I'm a little concerned at some of the other things that are going on out there, because at a recent meeting of one of the day centres, they were being asked if they would be prepared to join a cooperative across the whole region. And I think there's a great deal of confusion out there at the minute, because I agree with what it says in 2.4 here, that it should be locality based and that day centres should be working within that locality with the health board and the council. And it's really how we get the proper message out and the proper message across about the changes that are coming and how the day centres then can fit into that. I mean, I've asked at the area committee this last week at Annandale and Esdale that we try and engage with the 4 local day centres as 4 centres with officers to talk about how the locality will work. Because first there was I think a thing through the third sector to try and get all the day centres together. Now there's a cooperative looking at that, and really they are individual organisations that work individually within their communities. And I don't think you can ever link them totally together. But there are things, obviously, that we need to ask them to do for us. But it's how we make sure that through the Community Health and Social Care Partnership Board, when this is transferred, that the discussions will take place, and really that board does know that also that this council values highly the work and effort that day centres have put in over the last 30 years and the money they've actually saved the council in the work they do. Because there is an issue out there and it's confusing, and I know some of the elderly members of day centre management committees are getting very, very concerned about the issue.
Thanks for that. I think you've combined a number of points in there, Dennis. Firstly, if they are, as you say, individual groups, we can't stop them joining a cooperative if that's what they feel that they want to do. We can't send a message to the integration board or instruct them, but we can certainly operate within the integration board and take forward what we see as an appropriate mechanism for addressing day centres in the new locality-based arrangement that will be put in place when the shadow board's up and running next month. Graham, do you want to address some of the points that Dennis raised?
I mean, I think what I'd want to do is give the committee an assurance here. It is my view that the day centres would work far better as a sector if they were somehow better organised together. Now, I've always been clear, and Councillor Cruthers has been at a meeting when he's heard me say this to them all. How they do that is a matter for themselves. Third sector Dumfries and Galloway were very prepared to facilitate a cooperative. Only 3 or 4 actually ever expressed their interest in doing that. The rest of them have subsequently gone down a network that I believe predates from about 10 to 15 years ago that's facilitated by Age Scotland. Now, how they choose to organise themselves as a sector is for them. You're absolutely right, they are 10 independent organisations, but as a collective they will work far, far better and achieve far greater things, in my view, if they work together. They cannot be 10 independent little free states or big free states in the case of the 2 in Wigtonshire and the 1 in Dumfries. So how they come together, how they achieve economies of scale, how they potentially bid together for outside funds, because I think it's worth noting, it's not in the report, that for every pound that the council provides them, they're bringing in over that pound from other funding sources. Now, for example, for your cases in Langham, if Langham want to make a single bid, in my view, that bid to external fundings, particularly some of the bigger ones, would be better off done as a collective. So you're actually talking about whether you're doing it on whether an Annandale and Esdale basis or whether you're doing it across a regional basis. So the bit about how they come together, I've left entirely to them to decide. The fact that I've consistently given them the message that I think they would be better off working together, because at some point, and let's be clear about it, this is a commission service. This is a commission service. It's not a grant, it's a commission service, which therefore at some point day services of this nature would have to be retendered. And I think, again, the collective knowledge of 10 would work far better than potentially 1s or 2s. I hope that answers your points about the collective stuff.
Thanks, Dennis. Another 5 speakers now. Councillor Dick.
Thanks, Chair. Just first of all to say that I welcome the level of funding maintained over the current year. I'm well aware of the locality-based model that's currently being discussed as part of the integrated process. Can I just turn to 3.5 with reference to the agreement on December 2013 Social Work Services Committee, which we did indeed agree to have a detailed review of day centres and to seek to reduce the potential budget of over 97,000. But could I also point out that was not mentioned here was in the 2013 meeting, we agreed to look at an assessment of where day centres should lie in terms of asset management and budgetary provision to ensure the appropriate financial models in place as part of integration planning. And we also agreed to look at the implications of an inflationary uplift, which is not mentioned in here, and an analysis of the current referral process against commission service. And there was to have been a report back in August last year. And that last point, I think, is extremely important because that's where a greater use could be made of day centres. I think specifically we talked about social work referrals and GP referrals. But that's not mentioned in here, and I think it's very important that it should be.
Do you mean in terms of the information being passed to the new integration board, Ian? Because clearly we will have no role to play after next month.
Yes, indeed, and I think it should be spelled out in the terms of the agreement, December 2013.
Okay, I'll ask Graham to ensure that this information is included in a report to the integration board. And I'm sure members will be able to pursue that particular agenda within the integration board if that is the direction they want to take. Councillor Carruthers.
Thanks, Chairman. Pretty much agree with what people have been saying in regards to the level of funding. It's been supported. I think it's right. I think Graham makes some very, very valid points. This will change over the next year, 2 years. It's been got to change for the last 3 years. It hasn't got there, but I think through the Health and Social Care Integration Board coming on board, that'll certainly make changes. See, 3.8 in particular, I'm just trying to get an understanding how will the council still retain, the budget will still retain, the adult care still retains, again, it's coming from social work services budget through the adult services, it's moving to Health and Social Care Integration Board. Is the council, other than the board, got no say over this at all, and for here on in, after April, is this the last time we'll really get the chance to comment on this, or does it disappear other than area committees and such like? Just it's the question I've been asking again and again, and just as we move towards this meeting that's been deferred, which we touched on earlier, before the minute you've picked up on, I've read your letter and understand it fully, but I'd like to get a clear understanding how do we now as local members, and it's been touched on by everybody, how do we influence how the Health and Social Care Integration Board spend this money, what we feel is maybe wisely, and agree with the fact it's commissioned when there's only potentially 5, maybe 6 of us from the 47 councils going to be sitting on that board?
Well, the short answer is you don't. The short answer is we're under instruction from the Scottish Government to transfer adult services to this new integration board. That's a fact. Later report outlines how much money we will be sending in conjunction with that. I think the council on the 19th of March will decide how many members sit on the board. It'll be in conjunction with the health board, obviously. It'll be a shared arrangement. But the only influence that individual members of the council have that are on the board is either through board members or through the localities arrangement once that's in place. But there is a shadow year when I guess we will discuss in detail some of the issues that arise, because I'm quite sure the transition will not be smooth or it will not be seamless. I'm sure there will be matters, and Lillian outlined some of them later on in the papers, where we will have some adjustment to make. So we'll have a year when we will have a debate at social work, but the reality of life is that when the council decided on the 19th of March to agree formally this new board, we will have no real influence in how that money is spent, other than with the membership of the new board. Lillian, anything you can add to that, just to make sure, or Graham, to make sure I'm exactly right in what I'm saying?
I think absolutely agree with the Chair's comments there and description. Clearly the statutory responsibility for the service delivery lies with myself in terms of social work services, and Graham is the head of adult services, and we will obviously raise issues with the chief operating officer, but ultimately it is the IJB that will make the decisions.
Graham, you want to add something? Because Ian wants to come back. Ian?
I'm fine. I mean, what I was going to say was actually quite content. I think you're absolutely right. What you've said, Chairman, was what I expected, but the only thing I would have liked to have seen was some kind of reporting mechanism back to this committee to say this is how it's actually, are we still going to have a social work committee? That's the thing, or we're not. That's something we're still looking at. How do the councillors actually see how that's happening, other than me sitting? And that's what the kind of deeper question I was asking, really.
Well, certainly, if Lillian's sitting beside me as Chief Social Work Officer, it's a deeper question if we're not going to have you in. But I would think, Lillian, do you have a...
I just wonder if I could come back in, Councillor Crothers. We are looking at the governance arrangements, and there will be a reporting mechanism that we will insist upon, reporting back to Social Work Committee. That is currently in discussion for agreement at the first IJB.
Graham, did you want to conclude your response?
I think, again, for all elected members, I think the proposals that we've got in this report are really to try and link the day centres into the locality management structures in a way that they're just not connected at the moment. Now, I think that's going to be challenging for some. I think others will take to it very, very easily. I think that if you endorse all of these recommendations we're making to you today, it gives day centres the opportunities to actually prove their worth, because we've never been able to do that in a systematic, planned and very, very transparent way. So using the outcome star method over the next year will actually allow day centres not only to come up with some really good evaluation data, but actually with the use of the Innovation Fund in localities, they will be able to actually go, we could do this, we could do that. I think, as Councillor Mayles rightly pointed out, with potentially bringing the four in Annandale and Eskdale together. What can we do in Annandale and Eskdale that perhaps is a bit different from what we've traditionally done, that actually, one, better meets the needs and aspirations of helping service users of day centres achieve their outcomes, but two, how do we fit, how do we link to everything else that's going on in with the locality? Now, your bit about where social work fit with that. One of our clear priorities here is around about earlier intervention and prevention. And when it comes to older people, I can't think of too many things that we currently do. We currently do, not what that we could do, but that we currently do that sits within that earlier intervention and preventative sort of envelope. Now, I think day centres have got a way to go. I think some probably more than others, but I think the opportunity is actually there for them to actually look at that, not just as an individual day centre, but as an individual day centre surrounded by other services for older people.
Thanks for that comprehensive response, Graham. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, and Graham has spoken of the incorporating it into the structure, our day centres, and I think that's to be welcomed. And there will be some that will see this as a challenge, where their perception has been death by 1,000 cuts, and how many reviews does the day centres need to go through, as they have for many, many years now. Because if I look at 3.6.1 in respect of the budgeting, or what we provide as a commission service, as indeed Graham has referred to, then that's 482,961,000, and we all know that that's nothing near to what's required to run a day centre, and many, if not all, rely on their own funding sources, their own efforts to actually meet some of the funding that they do receive. But in this one, I'm not quite sure whether indeed, I know in last year there was an uplift for the day centres, whether indeed we are meeting that uplift again under inflation. Because all it says is that we're maintaining the funding. So if I could have an answer to that. And on the commission service that Graham refers to, and I well remember the discussions and the meetings we had with one particular day centre anyway, was how do we refer clients or service users, whatever way you want to call them, to day centres where there will be added value in working alongside day centres, and we do maximise the potential of these day centres and what they provide. Thereby, there's a win-win situation in terms of what they give us as day service and as social work, the service users can gain advantage, accepting that it's a choice issue associated with that. So two things, Chair, is that the finances and the increased potential use of day centres.
Can I just clarify the first question then, Willie, because in 2.1 we're asked to agree the funding made available 2014-15 is continued for 2016. Now that means if there was an uplift, that uplift retained. Aye, but we're not adding an uplift again this year. That's last year's money that's paid again, that says quite clearly in 2.1 in the report, that's the proposal. And the figure's there, so there's no dubiety. And the second part of the question, Graham can answer.
One of the things we've agreed to do is we've agreed to every day centre having a link worker from the area teams that they're in. One, really to bring information to and from, two, to sort of start to engage them in locality processes. That, I would hope, would increase the potential for more people being referred to day centres. However, I would have to, I think you're quite right in pointing out, Councillor Scobie, this is about choice. Some of the services that some of the day centres are providing, some people wouldn't want to go anywhere near. Okay? I mean, let's just be clear about it. These all started up basically as voluntary lunch clubs. Voluntary lunch clubs, some of them are, you know, they haven't moved potentially that far down that road from that. So for some people, they will not want to go near day centres, hence the Innovation Fund, hence the bit about actually getting out into communities and actually saying, what is it that we can do? And I think that the linking with locality management structures will actually assist them in that.
Willie?
Yeah, I'm grateful for your clarification, Chair, under the recommendation of 2.1. I would hope that we do look at the inflationary uplift as was agreed in 2014-15 to award to the day centres and then change 2.1 to recognise again the inflationary uplift.
If that's a proposal, I'll come back and ask you at the end. Councillor Hazard?
Chair, it's a similar sort of question. We have within 3.6 the base budget for day centres 482. The actual cost is 568. When we transfer this to the integrated joint board, do we transfer the base budget or do we transfer the full cost of the service to the board in future years? It's just for more information, because in 2016-17 is it a £568,000 transfer or a 482?
Angela? Graham?
For 15-16, subject to your approval today, it will be the 568.
Yes, but the following year, because some of that money is actually PYF money, so we've transferred a service that costs 568. Are we transferring the full 568 in perpetuity to the IJB, they call it, rather than the 482?
Graham or Angela?
Councillor Hislop, that there is an assumed contribution from health of 350,000 to the social work budget, and 97 of that is a contribution to the day centre. So the PYF money that we achieved in 14-15 is part of that funding from health. So going forward, we have this contribution that we require to negotiate through the IGB to achieve that, and that difference in the two figures given for day centres is part of that.
So can I take it it's the 482 or 483,000 that will transfer from our budget to the IJB, and the rest will be up to the health board to find as they currently do?
I would agree with that. Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks very much for letting me in, Chair. Just a couple of things here. Been broadly very supportive of this, and as you and Ted know, that I visited every single day centre in the management committee not that many months ago. What came across very clearly is that they didn't like being given a fait accompli. Right? We've got, as Graham so rightly said, a vast variance in what each of the 10 deliver, what their capabilities of delivering are, and the potential. My worry I've got here, and if I can get assurance, I'll be totally supportive of the process. The £50,000 Innovation Fund money, which has come from PYF, courtesy of third sector D&G, can we get an assurance that if the day centres choose not to join their consortium, they will get an equal share of this money? Because the money is coming across for all the day centres, not just for those in the consortium run by third sector first, or third sector D&G, what we call them. Yeah.
Are you talking about the £50,000? Are you talking about the 560 odd?
No, the 50,000. Yes, it's for the innovation work, for the work to continue. And I can understand why that's been set aside or been claimed for. But how do we use that 50,000? That's my question. And can we get assurance that they will all be treated equally, not just the ones who are actually part of their consortium?
It's outlined in the paper that it's for a training programme, is it not?
No, it's not.
No, Graham.
Just to be absolutely clear, we achieved the extra money from PYF with the support of third sector Dumfries and Galloway. The £50,000 Innovation Fund is available to all 10 day centres to bid into at a criteria that we've yet to agree. So it's there for everybody to use.
Chair, can I come back? That's exactly the reason for my question. That clarity actually helps. It's not that clear in the paper, because there's a tying in, there's an insinuation that the third sector organisation will be the one, and that's exactly what the resistance from 7 of the 10 day centres came from. They didn't want to be part of that consortium. So we just need some clarity and absolute assurance that all 10 day centres, and Graham's just given us that, that's fine.
Is Graham going to tell us what the criteria will be when it's eventually compiled or constructed?
I am happy to do that, but what I've said to day centres, I will not sit there by myself as judge and jury, and I've asked them to come back to me with how they think that might work, whether that's locality representatives from day centres, whether that's potentially third sector Dumfries and Galloway being there, whether that's potentially been Age UK being there, which is what I've suggested to them, as well as me. So I'm not just the judge and jury. We have to be clear, this is about innovation, so it won't be about doing more of the same thing. It might be doing the same thing in a different place. So for example, in Councillor Nicholl's sphere of influence, if we can move services that are currently provided in Newton Stewart further out from Newton Stewart, even one day a week, down into the Mackers, etc., that's the sort of thing. Whether it's about bringing in podiatry, basic podiatry into day centres, that's an innovation, and so on and so forth. So that fund is there, minus the outcome star costs, to be bid into by the 10 day centres.
Okay, Andy, and then I'll have to move on to
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Graham. That's exactly the kind of answer I was looking for. The second question, I did say there was two, Chair, was that have community learning development had any input with these 10 day centres looking at sustainability?
Graham?
I can't answer that. Certainly I haven't involved them in it. Whether they've involved themselves in it, I don't know.
Okay, I've got 3 speakers still to go. Councillor Brodie.
Thanks, Chair. This funding measure is appreciated, welcome. We don't seem to have really moved on the last 6 years since I raised this at the Social Work Services Committee back then. We've still got a historic model based on funding given out for historic reasons, and very difficult to break into that mold from community organisations who've got a service to offer of the people. So we really need to move towards the model of where we're meeting the needs of the older people in Dumfries and Galloway rather than having a historic model. So I'm hearing some good vibrations that locality model will move towards that we will be moving towards it, a service based on the need of the people rather than what's happened in the past. I know that from Anne's point of view, after more than 10 years of existence, it's still treated as a new kid in the block. It's still relying on top-up funding, which perhaps you confirm is still in place in this proposal. So how do we see ourselves getting a service based on need rather than historic circumstances?
Well, I think Annan was a new kid in the block as far as funding is concerned. I remember when it was introduced into the scheme along with other day centres. The problem we've got is what was outlined to you earlier. We're handing the service over. It will be to the localities team, and I can imagine there might be 4 different types of services in the 4 different localities that meet best the needs of the whole area, and as local members, the area committee, etc. Because I think one of the reporting mechanisms for the integration board is the local area committees. So you have an opportunity to get in there. You may even become one of the board members. I don't know how that will be constructed yet. Then you'll have a first-hand opportunity. But Graham, can you add or maybe just enlighten Councillor Brodie on the direction of travel, if you like?
I think the direction of travel is day centres are day centres. They provide some of the same things currently, but they provide them in very, very different buildings. Some of their facilities are absolutely fantastic. Some of them are not that great, let's say, and we'd be looking for improvement within that. The use of the outcome star, Councillor Brodie, I think is absolutely crucial in all this, because it will actually be able to give some proper evaluative data about the services that are being provided and about how effective they actually are. That's then for locality management teams alongside day centres to actually work their way through to say, can you try do this? Can you try and do that? What about if you did this? What about if you did that? Now, different people will react to that in different ways, I've no doubt. But ultimately, this will all become the work of locality management groups and about whether or not they want either the current model of day centres or a revised model of day centres or no model of day centres within their localities, because different localities will have different needs. The outcome star, I think, will allow the day centres to actually prove beyond all reasonable doubt about how effective they can be given the right support.
Thank you. Councillor Tuckfield, Councillor Yen, and then Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Chair. Graham has actually touched on the part that really interests me within the report, which is the outcome-based. And I think we've got to move to that. You're absolutely right. And it will be a tracker for developing services within those day centres. So all of that's very important. I will only touch on the day centre in Stranraer, which was opened 26 years ago. And when we opened it, we had a very high percentage of people coming for showers, etc. We had a lot of care in at that time, mainly because showers, not many of the bungalows for elderly people, etc., had showers in them. So nurses used to come and use the showers as well with their patients. So we've moved on, I think, a great deal from that. But one of the issues that really concerns me, only a very small percentage of people use day centres. I think it's between 2–4% something of the population. And it's not so much about encouraging people to come because it has to be choice. But within the rural areas, we have large pockets of elderly people who have no resources whatsoever. And we make use of things like pubs for lunches, etc., or in the village hall, getting together, having a lunch, etc. So are there any plans for the future once we do integrate? Surely we have to look at the populations which are isolated, elderly populations, and perhaps try to develop some sort of more coordinated resources.
I think that's very much, Councillor Tuckfield, a question for the Integration Board, what we're going to do moving forward. I realise you're expressing a view, but it's not for Graham to respond to that. Graham?
And I think that's the very useful way of putting it, because certainly the day centres have expressed, some of them have expressed a view about trying to do exactly what you're talking about. Now, how that all links up round about communities and in smaller rural settings, I think is a matter for localities and for communities to work out. But certainly that is something that we would be really, really supportive of. It's then a choice for the locality management teams to decide how they spend their money.
Thank you. That's a very helpful response. Thank you.
Councillor Yen.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. On the back of Councillor Ferguson's point on COD, could our COD offer any support to all day centres, bearing in mind it's the support they needed and the support they would like COD to give?
Well, got to bear in mind that that's not managed by this committee, therefore we don't have an authority over that, but I think it's a useful suggestion. I think let's be put forward to the CLD managers, and I'm sure Lillian will take that for us and pass that suggestion on. Thanks for that. Councillor Dick.
Yeah, I think this is a report that we really should be welcoming, and grateful for the reassurances. Could I just have an assurance when we go to the recommendations that those provisions of the minutes of the 2013 will be included in the information that's requested to be discussed at the integration board, namely the inflationary uplift, the asset planning and referrals?
Happy to do that, and Lillian's already undertaken to do that, Councillor Dick. The problem I've got, of course, isn't, and you know, is we can pass on the information. It's what that organisation does with it, but no, we will certainly ensure that's passed. Okay, if members are happy, then can we go to the recommendations? Members are asked to agree that the funding made available to day centres. Councillor Scobie, just remembered you want to put up a motion.
Just to recognise in 2.1, Chair, as you were reading it out, again recognising 3.6.1 and 3.6.2 in that the PYF money is available to us, and to be fair to everyone across the board, the 10-day centres that we agree to the funding made available to the day centres in 2014-15, inclusive of the uplift, would be my amendment to 2.1, and hope that everybody, in fairness across the board, because we can leave it, as you've rightly pointed out more than once today, that it will be a locality issue in terms of how we disperse, but to build that in would secure and address the issue raised by Iva in terms of what figure we pass over. So putting this in the inflationary uplift will recognise that as a core funding issue. I would so move, Chair.
I think, though, in conjunction with that, you have to then identify where the funding will come from.
I thought I did that, Chair, in the PYF, the £97,000.
Is there enough resource in there to meet that requirement, Angela?
Chair, the PYF money is one-off for 1 year only and not recurring. The baseline figures that we're using for day centres that we'll come on to in the next paper is based on that 568,000. In 15-16, the shadow year, the baseline budget is that figure. It's then subject to ongoing negotiation and debate with the Integrated Joint Board.
So in that case, it would appear that there isn't the capacity to meet your motion within the resources that are identified in the paper.
That's not, as I heard it there, the 568,000 will transfer over in the shadow year. It will be available, as indeed that is where the 482,000 or near 483,000 will be taken from. So in my interpretation and view, it would be available, notwithstanding that it's a one-off. I'm happy to remain with the amendment to that recommendation, Chair.
I'll come back to you, Councillor Scobie. I've got Councillor Hislop and Councillor Carruthers.
Chair, we're basing this on an inflationary uplift. Is that in the fact that we currently have deflation just now, so we could actually get a cut in the budget?
Good question. Councillor Carruthers.
Just to get the actual facts, we need to know what the figure is, how much that is. I mean, if it's 3%, I think you're talking about £15,000 to £20,000. And where does that money actually come from? I'd have to ask, because putting you first, if it's innovation money, can it be used? I'd like to see where it was identified, or do we roll it over as a budget pressure into next year, which I think is a wee bit.
To simplify matters then, is anyone inclined to support Councillor Scobie's motion? Councillor Ferguson.
The question I'm going to ask, Chair, before I decide whether to support him or not, is that there is some money that's been retained by social work in the draft budgets in the next item. Given it's a relatively small amount of money, could that, and we should be transferring across the real cost to the joint board.
It's absolutely unique that we do budget setting on the hoof like this.
No, I'm not budget setting the hoof.
And what I'm saying is, normally, when a motion or amendment is placed and there is a financial implication, the mover and seconder is required to identify where the funding has come from. Now, Councillor Scobie seems to think there is flexibility within that budget to do that. I've asked Angela to clarify that. I'll ask her again. If we had a 3% uplift, is there capacity within that budget to provide that 3% uplift and still carry out the rest of the functions that are identified within the recommendations in this paper?
Chair, there isn't. No, not on an ongoing basis. All pressures going forward will need to be discussed as part of the integration scheme, which is currently out for consultation and comes for agreement on the 12th of March. We're laying out how we will identify pressures and deal with funding issues through the integrated joint board. And the day centres is one example of, I expect, a host of examples that will come to light over not only the shadow year, but in future years. So the baseline figure that's been used for 2015-16 for day centres is the 568,000, but that includes the PYF money. So we're looking at a figure in the first year, which in order to be sustained at that level, we'd have to go through the process of negotiation with the board.
Councillor Scobie and then Councillor Mail.
Yeah, Chair, and again I'm hearing my interpretation. I'm not asking for it to go beyond the 568. What I'm saying is an inflationary uplift on the 48296, the 483 almost, using the monies from the 97,000 to give that 3% uplift. And it would be a goodwill gesture because we are moving into a shadow year, and that pressure will remain, and it will be for the shadow board to determine whether it wants to continue to fund day centres, which I hope it will, and indeed maybe recognise that something it needs more to recognise the true cost of running day centres. So it's within the 568, but using the 483 almost as the baseline and given an inflationary uplift of 3%, and I believe it will come within the 568 here.
Okay, we'll get clarification at the very end. Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Mail and Councillor Dick.
Chair, if this is a one-off, I think what we need to recognise here, the base budget was set about 6 or 7 financial years ago. Right? The wages for the staff have gone up, the energy costs have gone up, the food costs have gone up, the day-to-day running's gone up. Right? And it's actually, I think, quite a reasonable thing, because if we're, and where I agree with Willie on this, the goodwill of transferring things over, and I also, I've been where you're sitting, I know how difficult this can be, but we also need to be clear and transparent with our friends in the NHS, that we're sending across a realistic budget for the provision of this service. And the first thing that's going to happen to the joint board, if we don't do this, is they're going to come straight back and say, the council's not set across enough money for this. And I think I'd be happy if I get a reassurance that that will be addressed in the negotiations with the joint board, right, as opposed to doing this today.
Everything will be negotiated with the joint board, and every person we employ in the country, in the region, sorry, is under the same pressure and looking for the same salary increases, and we're looking to deliver services and limited resources that we get from, guess who? Councillor Mail and then Councillor Dick. Councillor Dick. Right, I'm going to see.
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, Gail.
I think we're muddying the waters a little bit. We've got a very clear direction at the moment. We don't know what's going to happen until the negotiations are complete with the joint board. We might find that we'll have to give this another 150,000. We don't know. We might take 25 away. I think that to muddy the waters today when we don't have the fullest of information would not be helpful. And does he have a seconder?
So are you proposing we agree the recommendations as before us? Do you have a seconder for that, Councillor Haslip? Okay. Has Councillor Goby got a seconder for his proposal, bearing in mind you will be required to identify, irrespective of what Councillor Scobie keeps repeating, be able to, or willing, or have to identify exactly how much money the 3% will represent and where it will come from, where you're going to take it from. If the deliberations with the SNP group are going on, I'll just take it there isn't a seconder for Councillor Scobie's motion. In that case, we'll go to the recommendations. Members are asked to agree
Could I
that
note
the
my
funding
dissent
made
on that one,
available.
Chair?
Pardon?
Could I note my dissent on that one on 2.1?
Agree that the funding made available to day centres in 2014 of £568,127 is continued for financial year 2015-16, as in paragraph 362. Agree the use of additional £50,000 innovation fund made available through the Putting You First programme 2015-16, paragraph 363. Agree the overall plan of partnership work with the day centres during 2015-16, paragraph 37. And agree that day centres will form part of locality rather than centralised arrangements with the auspices of health and social care within the auspices of health and social care integration, paragraph 38. Thanks very much. A very long but healthy debate. We now come to item 8, health and social care integration. And again, this is simply an exercise we are obliged to conduct, instruction of the Scottish Government. Lillian, do you have anything to add to the report?
Just to say to elected members that we have kept children and families and justice service out with the scope of integration.
Thank you, Lillian. Is simply a report for information. Do members have any points they wish to raise or clarity? Councillor Dick?
Right. Can I just ask a point on Appendix 2, page 85? The care, the head of care and facilities management, they're not moving much of their function. Oh, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. I actually want to address the issue of absence management there. Why is the head of care and facilities management not moving across as the function will become integral to the whole joint integrated approach? I mean, specifically the function of absence management. Why are we retaining absence management since that should normally follow the employee?
Auntie Lillian?
Councillor Dick, the members of staff in terms of social work services will be retained within the local authority. They will not be transferring. So consequently, we remain the employer, so have that responsibility.
You know, Ian, that we're not transferring staff, that we're simply retaining staff, salarying them, but they report to the integration board. It's a kind of complicated arrangement, but that's where we are. I have Councillor Carruthers, and then I'll come to you, Andy.
Thanks, Chairman. It refers in the report in regards to transfer of mental health officers and retaining the bulk of them. I think it's something like 5%. Could you just tell me exactly how that's working? And as far as the integration board itself is, because it's been a question put out 2 or 3 times, I think as far as I'm aware, mental health by NHS is moving into under the integration joint board. Just reassurance that the mental health side of things, NHS is moving inside the integration board. It will report to that. And as far as where are we, and as far as I think some it's retained under children and young people's, but just how many rather as percentages in regards to full-time equivalents, how many will still be retained in the council?
Before Lillian answers, Julie White has offered a 1-hour seminar before our seminar on the 12th of March. When all these type of questions are, it's open to all members, you should have had an invite and you'll certainly get one if you haven't had. And that type of question, I think, would be better set to her, because she tells me that everything acute care will just simply go on block to this new board. But it's maybe not for Lillian to answer what the health board are going to do.
Happy with that, Chairman, in regards to the NHS side, but as far as the council is concerned, I'd like to get an understanding in regards to that 5% mental health officers.
Lillian.
Councillor Crothers, we are looking to retain the statutory responsibility in terms of the mental health officers. In terms of mental health services, yes, health services are putting that element into the integration. There are a number of areas that remain, I would describe as the grey area, which there is ongoing discussion, particularly around children, where social work have a different level of responsibility in terms of looked after and accommodated children up to the age of 25, and health have a cut-off point at 18. So there's a range of areas that we remain in discussion, both before the integration and during the shadow year, that we're working towards. I wouldn't be in a position at this moment in time to give you exact full-time equivalents, but I certainly will be happy to bring that back in the future if that would answer your question.
Thanks, Ian. Andy?
Thanks very much, Chair. Just coming back very quickly, two questions actually, Jim. First was a follow-on from Ian Dick's question, and I can't understand the rationale for absence management not being done in the localities where the day-to-day management of the staff is, because my understanding of the council's policy on absence management, or whatever you want to call it, is that the back-to-work interviews are to be conducted by the person's line manager, and the line managers will be in the localities, because the day-to-day management of the staff will be in the localities, although I appreciate the Chief Social Work Officer will have an overall lead, and as will the Chief Executive. So there's a duality here that was a major problem in the old joint futures, and if we don't sort this, we're going to have exactly the same problem again, right? Because some of the functions have to follow the staff, because let's not lose sight as well that the management, absence management thing was originally a welfare tool. It was for the welfare of the staff. Right? And that the best person to deal with the welfare of the staff, with all due respect, is actually their day-to-day line manager, right? Or their immediate manager. That's one thing. The second one, I'm more maybe meter thing, and that can be dealt with outside here, Chair. I agree with you. I'm reference 3.13, the MHOs. Does this refer only to the statutory role of the MHOs? I think the question here, if it is a yes, do we actually need 17 full-time equivalents? Or are they going to be involved in the treatment and the mental health, for example, of a client base or a service user, whatever you want to call it? And the following from that is that if they are, isn't there a conflict here?
Lillian.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. On your first point, the absence management will be managed by the direct line managers. My discussion earlier on was with regards to the fact that the local authority will retain the employment responsibility for the staffs who deliver. So the line manager will continue to do the returns to work and will feed into the overall absence management process of social work services. Your second point in terms of the statutory mental health, yes, we do believe we need 17 statutory mental health officers to deliver the ongoing service in terms of the referrals, etc. that we deal with. And the important part will be for us to do joint working to ensure that we deliver the service effectively, but we're confident that is the correct number.
Thanks, Lillian. Councillor Brodie? Thank you. Councillor Hislop?
Chair, it's just with regard clarification under 312 with the budget going forward. Will it actually be based on the final outturn? So the 741,000 underspend in elderly care that we can currently use against other overspends, will that be taken out, and therefore it'll be a reduced budget going forward for the elderly care, or will that money be left in so that that's what the assessed need is? That budget should be 741,000, because currently, if there is a wee bit of movement, it allows officers to balance the budget, whereas if this is taken out, this additional underspend, it's got to put more pressure on the services being retained by the council.
Angela?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hislop, Appendix 3 to the report shows a provisional calculation of the 2015-16 budget. And in that process, we've tried to analyse what is a one-off occurrence and what is ongoing, and to reflect some of the issues such as one-off income in that proposed budget to be delegated. Pass you on to Sean with Chair's permission for a bit more detail on that, if that's helpful.
Aye, very happy with that. Andy?
Why we wait until the outturn is because there's certain things can happen between now and the end of the year, and we have to analyse fully, as Angela said, the potential to move budgets around. As you can see from the outturn discussed earlier on, there's a number of pressures within learning disability and mental health services where we would look to try and see which how much of the income's on a permanent basis, move it about a bit, address some of the other issues. Appendix 3, we've attempted to do that, and basically, you know, how much we identify the budget pressures. We've also got to take off the savings for next year, which we'll take out of that. We'll then maybe apply some of the upratings, and we'll hold them back for when we need, you know, the money we've put aside for demographics. So it is almost a kind of a moving beast, almost. And what I will say is that for 15-16, it's a shadow year. We will monitor that closely, and we'll look at our activities. But whatever we put over should mirror the current activities that we're experiencing.
Thanks, Colin. Andy?
Thanks for letting me back in, Chair. Just building on what Sean actually said there, and some of the earlier comment and the assurance I got about the MHOs. They've got a unique role, haven't they? In that they're part of what they do, they're not answerable to the council, they're answerable to an outside, like the sheriff or other people. How do we build that into the locality budgets and plans, and how would that affect them?
Graham?
I think, Councillor Ferguson, the role of the MHO, as you're aware, is very, very unique. They will stay within the council. The MHOs will stay within the council. They will stay within social work services, within the reorganised council. The budgets, other than staffing, that go with mental health services, that will go to the integrated body. The exact amount that we need will be sorted out during the shadow year, I think, as Sean has actually sorted out. We have said 17 at the minute. That's the information that we have. That may change as we do further analysis and further analysis. The separation is very, very clear. Given the work that MHOs do, they are the only people, other than police, that can detain you against your will, other than some specific health staff as well. So you immediately see the conflict of interest there. If you have a psychiatrist saying, sorry, Mr. Ferguson, I need to detain you against your will, and then you're looking for somebody from the same body with the same the same management structure to actually endorse that. And that's always been about the independence of the MHO. The MHOs, it's not the sheriff quite, it's now mental health tribunals. The links with localities, I think, are really important, because although we're planning on a centralised team, that doesn't mean that everybody will sit centrally. People will still be within localities. We've yet to work through how many we need for actually statutory mental health work and how many we need to deliver a mental health service alongside our NHS colleagues. So there's two quite distinct parts, if that answers your question.
To just come back, Jim, because I understand, I mean, and ask the question, Graham's an MHO. To me, there's a bit of duality here, and there's a bit of conflict in that if Graham, as his day job as an MHO, was to decide something, and then Graham, as the older people's manager, was then to have to pick up the budget for that. That was the question I was getting at here. How do we actually deal with that? And the third part of it is that if we've got members of staff who've got a dual role as an MHO and a mental health, part of the mental health team, right, who actually look after people. How do we deal with that conflict in an integrated world? Because effectively, if that was the thrust behind do we need 17 MHOs? Earlier part of my question is, are we effectively talking here about having people in a role where they protect the interest of the person with the mental health problem, or do they fulfil the council statutory role to look after them? And there's a conflict there, isn't there?
I think we need to sort this out in another forum, Andy, because we'll need to sort it out today. And anyway, this not be raised at the integration board where both parties are sitting together across the table rather than us debating it here.
Well, we respect, Chair. If we agree this today, this is the position of the joint board, the council reps on the joint board. Because we're going there with a mandate, not our own mandate, we're going to a mandate for this committee.
This goes to the full council after this before it goes anywhere near a joint board. Graham, do you have a response to Andy's point?
I mean, I think the bit, and that's exactly why we're proposing what we're proposing now. I think that we've put 17 in there. We will be able to know through the shadow year exactly how many we need. We're also waiting on a new bit of legislation. There's a new mental health bill that they haven't quite told us how often they want us to review guardianships. And again, you'll appreciate the Chief Social Work Officer is the guardian and welfare guardian of a large number of people within the local authority. So the bit about the statutory intervention, that's the bit that will stay within social work. The mental health service bit will be the bit that goes, people will be doing one thing or another thing, they will not be doing both things, if that satisfies you.
Good, thanks, Andy. Again, it's been long and healthy. Can we go to the recommendations? Note the social care services set out in the Scottish Government guidance which must be integrated as part of the functions that must be delegated by our Council to the Dumfries and Galloway Integration Joint Board. Paragraph 37. Note that the draft Dumfries and Galloway Integration Scheme, which will include the functions and services to be delegated locally, will be considered by the Community Health and Social Care Partnership Board as interim integrated joint board on the 12th of March 2015, prior to submission to the full Council 26th of March, and the Dumfries and Galloway NHS Board in late 2015. For consideration and approval to ensure that the scheme is submitted to Scottish Ministers by the deadline of 1st of April 2014 as in paragraph 317. Note the 2014 budgets associated with this group of services, paragraph 39310 appendix 2. Note the provisional level of budget required to be delegated to integrate joint board for the shadow year of 2015-16, paragraph 311 appendix 3. Note the elements of budget it is proposed that the local authority retains, paragraph 313. Note the service areas and associated budgets where the full extent of responsibility for ongoing service delivery is still to be determined, paragraph 314. Note that budget figures are provisional, based on a projected outturn position for 2014-15 and will be kept under review, paragraph 38, 311, 317. And note that the proposed budgets to be delegated to support current levels of demand for each service type, and both demand levels and costs will require ongoing detailed monitoring during the shadow year and beyond, paragraph 38, 311 and 317. Thanks, members. Next item on the agenda is external scrutiny of social work services, October to December 2014. Lily.
Just like to submit this report to members in terms of the quarter covered within the report and what I would view to be largely positive external scrutiny. Heather, Colin and Jackie are here and happy to take any questions on in relation to this report.
Members. Well, it's encouraging. If there are no questions, Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, and it's really just, there are positive points ranging from 5 for the pot being full, from very good down to 2, it being weak in that respect, and that very much focuses on the inspection that has been conducted into the Dunmuir Park, and we have considered that as a separate report. There are a number of issues, and I think it was referred to, the majority of the issues have been sorted out, but there are still some residual problems. And a lot, in my opinion, from talking with the parents this morning and from the communication we received, is in and around the housing situation. And I noticed there is recommendation and progress reports here. It's really, you know, what progress is being made in terms of the involvement of the parents, where at one time there was a Dunmuir Park action group or whatever it was called, Chair. I just can't remember, but you know, it's in and around whether we are making progress into dealing with some of these issues and involving, as is the recommendation, the carers, family and carers.
Well, as an aside, I visited Dunmuir Park last week with Ted, the Vice Chair, and hugely impressed with the complex, with the staff, with the way the issues are being dealt with that have been highlighted by the scrutiny. And I'm sure Colin will maybe enlighten us into the progress that's being made and the communication that's been had with families. But I'd just like to say that I, for one, very, very impressed with staff and the organisation. In fact, my throwaway line, and it wasn't a throwaway line, was I wish it was in Sanka. Colin, would you like to just address the issues that Councillor Scobie raised?
I mean, there's a number of ways in which both the service users and the carers are being involved. One simple kind of thing that we're doing is that we're holding a number of themed events every month with service users and carers. That's one of the examples of how we're doing that. Another is that people are involved in the review process. Those reviews take place every 6 months now. In addition to that, every 3 months, service users and parents and carers will meet with the individual's key worker and link worker to handle and discuss any issues that may be in relation to the caring support arrangements.
And I think, Colin, it's an obvious question, but given the criticism that the inspection made of the delivery of service, we are improving and we're moving forward in a positive way with the families and the individuals who are tenants in these properties.
Yes, and also we've been doing a series of engagements with the care inspectorate as well to gauge their view about how we are progressing in certain areas, for example, in terms of the new support plans. So there's a number of different things that we're doing there.
And based on what measures are in place, I think members should be comforted that we are moving in the right direction. Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks very much, Chair. I have to welcome the progress in the two ARCs. That's impressive, and the impressive rating in fostering services is to be commended. I'm a bit disappointed at the supported lodgings and Dunmuir Park situations. Obviously, we're not going to Dunmuir Park at this moment in time, but and the supported lodging thing has been dealt with. The bit I'm more worried about, to be frank, is the Hawthorne Road issue. And the question I've got is, there was a recommendation not in this latest from the time before that hasn't been put in place. Can we get an explanation why that wasn't done at the time?
Well, if that information is before us, not before us, can you refer that to Lily and she will give you a direct response?
It was about staffing issues, but yeah, I'll speak to Lily offline if you want.
That'd be helpful. Thanks, Andy. Councillor Tuckfield.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to briefly touch on Dunmuir Park. A number of years ago, I visited the old establishment, which was Victorian with a 70s extension. It was damp. It was really very difficult for people with any sort of disabilities. And I haven't had the privilege of visiting the new Dunmuir Park, but I'm sure from I've read every report very, very carefully, and obviously I've had the same emails, etc. But I am really firm in my feelings that social work is making good progress. This is a new development, innovative, and there's always teething troubles. They've gone on rather longer than I would have wished, but I do believe social work is beginning to get there. I would also like to add to what Andy has said about fostering an adoption, totally different service, but it is superb and it's consistently superb. That's the point I would like to make out. Perhaps those are the assessments that all of the service should perhaps aspire to. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Tuckfield. And I, in conjunction with Councillor Scobie and others, also visited the old Dunmuir Park, and it definitely was not a welcoming place, and that was no reflection on the staff. It was the type of building. And as a throwaway line, it's unusual for an inspection to be conducted in the first year of a new construction, and that caused additional problems for staff, and probably one of the factors that resulted in the challenging report that was presented to the council. But I'd have to say the staff are very positive in their approach, and I know we'll get through that. Councillor Nicholl.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I presume that these inspections are done in a sort of rolling programme. There's no, over a period of time. But when you get one where you've got a week or at the bottom end of the scale, does that instigate a quicker return to do an inspection? And if so, what kind of timescales are we looking at?
Lillian.
Thank you for that, Councillor Nicholl. Whenever we do have an unannounced inspection and we have these indicators and recommendations, then we are obliged to respond to the care inspectorate with an action plan, and they will come back within a set period of time. It is dependent on the grade and it is dependent on a response, and if you use Dunmuir Park as an example, they've worked closely with us to meet those recommendations.
Thanks, Councillor Nicholl. If there are no other members, we've got the recommendations. Members are asked to note the largely positive outcome of scrutiny activity in respect of the overall performance of the service, and consider the progress being made in respect of the requirements and recommendations from inspection. Members content with that? Thank you. Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Colin. Item 10, Kinship Care Lobbying. Lillian, anything to add?
This report again was requested by Social Work Committee. The last lobbying activity in terms of the committee decision was 26th of January 2012, as reflected within my report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Elaine. I know Willie was particularly keen to have this lobbying activity reported back to members, and as you can see, the council per se is developing a lobbying strategy that will be adopted by all committees, service committees of the council. So it might be appropriate, Willie, to wait until the report, I understand it will be presented to the council in March, and then this committee can consider the implications of the decision made by the council. I can only imagine if we were to make any decision here, it would simply be taken to full council anyway. So if you're comfortable with that, Willie, we'll endorse the report and we'll await the outcome from full council. Willie?
Yeah, Chair. In the main, satisfied with what you're saying and welcome the way that you have approached this. I do think that the report should maybe go further, Chair, and we had a cross-party lobby group which included the kinship carers representatives on that group, and I would like to have seen that going forward to the full council, as indeed you have outlined and indicate will be the responsibility perhaps of the full council. So in that respect, I endorse, welcome the report that's before us, but to allow it to go further and recommend to the full council that indeed we do have a cross-party lobby group, because we have heard in previous comments made that while it is recognised that should the European Court of Human Rights come out and say that it has got to be paid and it's within the budget. This is an ongoing issue in terms of 18 on this year, and I fully expect that to increase further on ensuing years. So it is a pressure on the budget. I think that governments of all persuasions, both at Scottish level and at UK level, should be recognising it as such, and that the cross-party lobby group would enhance the lobbying activities. So I would hope we could include that in the recommendations as well, Chair.
I'll invite you to rehearse that at the end, Willie, if you're looking at it as an additional recommendation, because I feel that the easiest mechanism for that would be at full council to suggest such a thing and get the support of all members. That's what I would hope would happen, and I think that would short circuit what you're hoping to achieve. But I'll come back to you, Willie. I've got Councillor Dickon and Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks, Chair. Picking up on Willie's point regarding other agencies, I noticed in 3.6, this is one of the areas that takes into account UK benefits, and consequently, I think it's important. I don't know if I got my wording right, but I was going to sort of suggest an additional recommendation, which that the lobbying strategy includes, where appropriate, lobbying on reserved issues, the UK government and relevant agencies, with particular reference, obviously in this case, the DWP. So perhaps if that was competent, perhaps that might be relevant wording.
I'll come back to you in a minute or two with that as well, Ian, because remember, as we speak, the Council is developing a strategy. We will discuss it at length on the 19th of March. I would have thought any proposal, it would be better if it found favour by all members. Personally, I can't see a difficulty with it, but it would be a simple mechanism to accept the report, because it simply outlines where the Council is in its business, and it's only, I think, 3 weeks away, the 19th of March, and that's a perfect opportunity for these points to be addressed, and all members get the opportunity to form a view, because at the end of the day it may well go back there anyway, if we in conditions or additional recommendations that other members don't like. I have one more speaker, Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks very much, Chair, for letting me in again. We have to welcome this. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I'm a wee bit disappointed we're actually just picking out kinship care here, because there's significant bodies out there in learning and disability, older people looked after children, and I'd have been happier, I think, if the recommendation had just been lobbying activity in relation to all social services users, user groups, and rather than make this one a priority, they should all be our priorities. It's pure then where you place them in the list, in the pecking order of priorities, I suppose is a $64,000 question. But I'd be much happier if it had been the broad spectrum of the people who come in contact with social work.
I think you're absolutely right. I don't think Willie was trying to make anything different. I think the issue was that at the time when we were campaigning, it was a perceived injustice in that particular collective group of people. But I am where I'm offered to go back to Willie, and then I'll come back to Ian. But I still believe, and I would suggest that the simplest mechanism is to go to the full council, present a case, and get the whole thing embraced, because it may be the council proposes no lobbying activity whatsoever. So, Willie, are you content to let this sit for 3 weeks? Because you can have it, I will indulge you with any other business the week after or the next meeting after the full council if the lobbying activity proposals don't meet with your aspirations. I don't say we'll do anything, but I'll bring it in as in any other business at that time.
Your pragmatic approach always impresses me, Chair, and your wit and charm included. Chair, I only offer back to you that if the committee were of a mind and I accept the report, is what I'm saying. I welcome and accept the report here, but I would hope it could go further, taking the point that Andy's making. There are other areas that will come into consideration in terms of how and where we lobby, as indeed Ian has identified, and to include that does not change the thrust of the report. What I'm saying, it would have easier passage if it was going with a recommendation from Social Work Committee that this is the road they wish to travel in terms of establishing again or re-establishing the cross-party lobby group, so that we're constantly on top of what will be, in my opinion, pressure on the budget, which I don't think anyone here would deny. So it's so that that's included in the report, and it will be for full council in terms of agreeing its strategic approach and how it does. And I would hope it wouldn't be much different from what's before us today, but that we include the cross-party lobby group.
Mind you, we've achieved what we looked for. We now have kinship carers with exactly the same payments as foster carers. That was the object of the exercise. You've actually got that. So what we're looking at here, although kinship carers refer to it, we're talking about lobbying. That's what we're talking about. And I think it should go, this report as it is, and any amendment should be placed at full council. Andy, are you happy with that, Ian? Andy?
Yeah, happy to take your assurance that you'll actually take forward the wider social work issue and the lobbying debate within the administration.
If things go wrong, it will come back here and we will reconsider it. Members happy with that? Thank you. In that case, recommendation, consider the future focus of lobbying activity in relation to kinship care. Recommend that kinship care is a priority for inclusion in this development of the Council's lobbying strategy as detailed in 3.8, and any lobbying is dealt with via this process. When appropriate, give consideration to the outcome of the ongoing negotiations between the Scottish Government, COSLA, Social Work Scotland, Social Work Services and the Equalities and Human Rights Commission. Okay, thank you. Item 11, Social Work Scotland Annual Conference and Exhibition, 17-18th of June. Whose right it is anyway? We normally send delegates to this. I am not volunteering, but if Chair and Social Work and Vice Chair of Social Work, who members want to go, or suitable substitute from the body of the Social Work Services Committee, I'm happy to agree that. Andy?
As previous practice, the Chair and Vice Chair move that. Yep.
And if they're unable to go, we'll seek volunteers from the other membership of the committee. Thank you. Okay. Item 12, Carers Assessment, Carers Support Plan. Lillian, do you have anything to add? Oh, it's Graham that's doing this. Graham? And this is Jenny. Penny even. I have a wonderful ability getting folks' names wrong. Penny. Welcome, Penny. Do you have anything to add to your report?
No, I don't at the moment.
Okay. The members have any questions, will they?
Welcome the report, Chair, and Graham and I has had a fair bit of discussion on this in various forums, but it's addressing the 3.2 in terms of the context. 3.21 research indicates that across Scotland and the UK there is a low uptake of carers assessments recorded on the social work service system. I think we need greater detail on this, Chair, to see how it is progressing. My understanding, and I can be corrected on this one and would welcome a correction, it's something like 13% of carers are actually have been assessed, let it be through self-assessment or other mechanisms, and care plans in place, such as referred to as 3.2.2 and the Carers' Right Bill. So I would like to see a more, what percentage we are at in terms of the carers and what care plans are out there, and how many have got it, how many have been assessed by whatever means, and also what that means is to see that progress is being made where we don't accept or we try to improve rather than not accept the UK situation, the Scottish situation, and the real effect in region-wide. And I would like to see that so that we are recognising progress is being made, because as the carers or those that they're caring for get older, so does the carers and their needs change, as is recognised in the report. So I would like to see where we're at, what's the direction of travel, and how we're improving in that, Chair.
Graham or Penny? Penny?
Thank you. We aren't unusual in Dumfries and Galloway as across the whole of Scotland and indeed the whole of the UK. There's been a number of reports around this issue come out, and there's a varying number of reasons for the seeming lack of carers assessments. Indeed, sometimes carers themselves do not want to be assessed. Carers have taken offence at the idea that they are being assessed as to their ability to care, which is why the Scottish Government is promoting this idea of a co-produced carer support plan. We have a relatively few carers assessments registered on our Framework I system because often the carer hasn't been assessed independently of the cared for person. So the carer's assessment is there, but unfortunately it's within the documentation to do with the cared for person. And this is something that's been found in a number of reports as well.
Graham, do you want to add?
Yeah, just very briefly, I think it's also, I think we can give you a number, no problem, to answer your direct question. I think the other bit is how many are we offering? Because I think, as Penny's quite rightly outlined, not everybody that's offered will accept. I think that's one thing. I think the other bit is, if you remember how we work with carers in Dumfries and Galloway, and I think we do it actually very, very well if we look at the totality of it. The bulk of people who are in a caring role do not receive support directly from social work. They will receive it indirectly through council grants, through the likes of the carer centre, using carer involvement. And I think that's a really, really important part that people shouldn't lose. Yes, we could do it better. Yes, we could report on it better. But carers are provided for through a variety of different sources, not just direct social work contact.
Well, you want to come back now, Andy?
Yeah, Chair, and I'm sure if it's approached, and I'm offering no criticism of what Penny said, it's not whether they're being assessed as to whether they're correct for caring after their loved ones or whatever. This is an assessment of their needs, is what I'm addressing here. And it's not always about whether they are the proper person for looking after their loved ones. That goes, I would hope, without saying. And so, in that respect, what I'm asking for, I believe, is reasonable. And again, from what the two officers have said, it's the journey that we are travelling. And that will come out by way of a report as to how many have been assessed. Because Graham says he could give us the figures, then I would welcome those figures coming forward. If he can give us them, then to see that. And then we would start to see then the percentage that really don't want to be assessed either by self-assessment or any other means. But it's that journey in terms of how we're improving the service is what I'm looking for. And then we can see the differences. We'd be able to see that of the 50% that we were approached, 46%, as an example, maybe say they didn't want it. But we would be then seeing that. We are not seeing it from this report. And I welcome the report as to what I'm saying. I welcome the explanations being given, but it's to put substance to that. And there is no substance here to try and see what the figures are. I ask for that report, Chair.
Would that pose a difficulty to you, Penny? Can we achieve that? Okay, you'll get that, Willie. Councillor Ferguson and Councillor McGregor.
Thanks, Chair. I think, I welcome this report because the Council had the vision in 2012 to actually set up a carer strategy that I had the privilege to launch with Penny in Castle Douglas. That was, now, there's a bit of a laugh here. Is obviously somebody must think it's funny about carers, but I don't see it as funny about carers. Right. The question I'm about to put here, or the comment I'm going to make, is the proactive approach to actually implement it before it's a statutory requirement should be commended. That's the point I'm making. So rather than having a pop, I'm actually totally the opposite, and commending the officers and the staff for the way they're bringing this forward now, rather than wait until they have to do it.
Nice to see staff being complimented. Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the report, and I think that it's certainly important for those who do want to feel more supported and have that as an option. I'm very comfortable that it's a voluntary scheme at the moment, and I think that people should be under no pressure whatsoever to sign up to it. I do have concerns, though, through the Carers' Rights Bill. Is this a step one to them creating a compulsory register or potential licensing?
No, it's not. It's trying to. The bill is going to be supporting the rights of carers to an assessment. It's a lot of it is actually endorsing previous legislation that's already in place, but bringing it all together in one place.
It's utterly voluntary at the moment.
Can I also say that in terms of a support plan, it's something that would be co-produced with the carer, and it's recognising the carer journey that can be. It's a very individual journey, and so carers can come back, and it's a kind of iterative process.
Thanks, Penny. Is everybody happy with that? Okay, can we go to the recommendation, please? Members are asked to recognise the proposal as a change of practice, agree to deliver carer support plans co-produced with carers instead of carers assessments, and agree to the proposed pilot delivered through a partnership with third sector carer support organisations. Thanks, members. Thank you. Go to item 13, non-residential community care charging policy. Before I ask Lillian to speak to this, we've been asked to agree to uplift non-residential charging policy charges in line with Department of Work and Pensions annual uplift as per 3.8. I think that's entirely appropriate. But for the remainder, I think there are a number of issues that we need to address. We need to investigate benefit maximisation, whether or not we benchmark against COSLA or against similar organisations with the same low-wage economy, etc., etc. So I think it would be more beneficial, and this will come back again and again in different guises, unless you have a seminar or some mechanism to decide how best to approach income and income maximisation and our own charging policy. So members be happy if we could agree 2.1 and then agree to ask Lillian to arrange a seminar for members, either on a different day or an hour before one of the next service committees, to address this particular element of work. Members be happy with that? Great, thanks for that. Ivor?
Chair, just for an assurance, my reading of this, if we had agreed to take all of the decisions today, that would have had a positive impact or financially, but not on the people, possibly, of our budgets going forward. If we don't take the decision, it won't have a negative because it's not included in next year's budget assumptions anyway.
No, I think that's right. It was not part of the budget setting process. Andy?
Just if I'm picking you up right here, Chair, you're wanting to work on 2.1 and 2.2, and from 2.3 onwards. No, is it 2.1 we're going to
2.1 only.
And from
and then the
2.2
remainder
onwards.
is part of the debate in the seminar, because whether or no COSLA potentially is dismantling itself, so is that the right place to benchmark? Should we benchmark against the wealthiest councils in Scotland or similar financial situations to our own? I don't mean as a council, I'm talking about the income that the public at large get and the wage economy in Dumfries and Galloway.
Can I get back in? Thanks for the own goal, because it seems to be the different Labour controlled councillors that are falling out about it. But can we also make sure or visit the issue about telecare? Because is telecare a voluntary service, or is telecare part of somebody's care package, part of the plan? It's also integral to the co-production of the services in relation to health social care, particularly older people. And if we put a charge on it, right, to meet our short-term needs, what are the long-term ramifications of that on the GP's budget? Because if they don't have telecare, they're going to end up at their local surgeries, or even worse, the emergency department. So can we make sure that we actually have, during the seminar, I'm looking at Lillian here, and can we make sure that that part of the debate is at least included in that seminar?
Lillian's been writing furiously, Andy. It'll form part of that seminar. Thanks very much, members. In that case, can we agree to uplift non-residential charging policy charges in line with DWP annual uplift as per 3.8, and agree to hold a seminar to debate the remaining issues that are contained within this paper, including telecare? Okay, thank you. Item 14, I have no other business. Item 15, Local Government Scotland Act 1973. Consider adoption of a resolution to exclude the public from the meeting in terms of section 51A in brackets 4 and of paragraph 5 of part 1 of schedule 7A, the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. Are members happy to accept that? Thank you. In that case, we come to item 16, response to the complaints review.